So, how many of you know the podcast Serial? That's Serial. Okay, back in 2014, when Serial came out with its first season, which was about a high school girl in Baltimore who was murdered, it really launched the podcast boom. Now, these days, we're flooded with podcasts, some silly, some weighty, some sublime. So it may be that you kind of missed the fact that Serial just came out with another season, which just concluded a couple of days ago. It was about Guantanamo, the detention center in Cuba that America set up after 9/11 for suspected terrorists. A sordid tale about kidnapping and torture and waterboarding and mistaken identity and infinitely delayed justice. It was very well told by Serial, and in the telling, they reminded me of a time a while ago that I tried to send a message about Guantanamo, and in return received a very chilling and threatening message, then received a very supportive message that still means a lot to me today. So I was going to tell you that story. I've got to take you back to July 2008. I'm working as a columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and it's the week of Independence Day, and I get in my head to send a message about Independence Day to our readers. And at that time, some stories, some new reporting had just come out about the CIA black sites, those places where suspected terrorists were taken with hoods over their head and then tortured over and over and over. So here's what my column for the July 4th said. Cancel the parade. Put the flags back in the closet. Stuff the fireworks back in the box. The hot dogs back in the refrigerator. We don't deserve to celebrate the ideal of freedom sketched on our Independence Day this year. We violated the July 4th creed. Unlike the brave men of 1776 who did their work in a hot hall a few blocks from here, we are cowards. We no longer believe that certain freedoms, certain rights are inalienable, which means they cannot be taken away no matter what a person does or what they're suspected of doing. We've chosen the coward's path. We've said to our leaders, we're scared. So go ahead and do anything you can think of, no matter how vile, to keep us safe. We don't deserve the July 4th this year. So that landed in the Inquirer on the Tuesday. That morning I had my usual work routine, and then I had lunch out of the office, went to that, came back about 1:30. Looked at my office phone, it was blinking red, telling me it was full of messages. Looked at my email, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails that hadn't been there when I left from all over the country. What had happened is that a conservative talk show host by the name of Rush Limbaugh had done me the dubious honor of reading my piece over the air to his legion of loyal listeners. Now, for you youngins out here who don't know who Rush Limbaugh is, he was the big dog of talk radio in the 90s and the 2000s. In today's terms, he was Joe Rogan, Candace Owens, and Ben Shapiro all rolled into one. And all his listeners were called ditto heads because they did whatever he told them. And that morning, this is what he told them to do. You call up or write that disgusting Chris Satullo and tell unpatriotic dude that he is and tell him what you think of him. And also call his newspaper and tell them to fire you. So I started scrolling through the messages, and outside the usual profanities and insults, they had a theme, which is, Satullo, if you hate this country so much, why don't, can you complete the sentence? You go back where you came from. And they had some very inventive ideas about where I'd come from. Interestingly, none of them mentioned the place of my actual birth, Cleveland, Ohio. They had ran through the usual suspects, Iran, Iraq, Russia, and Cuba, but some of them were really interesting. Canada? Jamaica? Sweden? And my favorite, Albania. But whatever. it is, part of the lot in life of a columnist to get nasty grams. You got to make like Tay-Tay, shake it off, right? So that's what I did. Also, I was kind of a little bit gleeful inside that maybe I'd actually gotten Rush Limbaugh's goat. That felt good. But there was one sense of alarm. All those calls to the main switchboard of the paper demanding that I be fired. See, the problem was the owner of the paper, he'd only been the owner for a couple of years, really, really didn't like me. He had been, before he owned the paper, a Republican mouthpiece, and we had tangled often. He'd already tried to fire me once. The union had stopped him. So I was a little worried about this, and I kind of thought, gee, I really hope that those messages don't make it to his desk. No such luck. A couple of days later, I woke up to another message, very public, from him. He had told the editorial page of the paper, my former province, which I used to run, to devote a whole page to nothing but readers' letters castigating me. No positive letters, even though I knew there had been some. And in the middle of that page, in a big black box, was a letter from the publisher himself disavowing the column and me. Now, this is unusual. This doesn't happen in newspapers, usually that a publisher throws one of his own under the bus. And my newsroom colleagues were kind of appalled. They came up to me and they said, wow, that was rough. What a bullshit move. But also, none of them were racing to the ramparts to defend me publicly. And I got it. They had jobs to protect. They had tuitions to pay, mouths to feed. I was not a hill anybody was willing to die on. So a little bit frazzled, a little bit tender, I hopped in the car. It was July 4th weekend. I was actually going to the Jersey Shore to meet my family. They were already there. So I arrived at the beach, walked up, sat down, and my daughter said to me, Dad, what's up? You look a little down. And my wife jumped in and said, your dad's going through a couple of things right now. Tell her, Chris. So I did. And then my wife and my daughter proceeded to send me another message, which, to put it in the mock Latin, would read as illegitimately non carborundum. Don't let the bastards grind you down. And my daughter said to me, Dad, look, we believe in you. We love you. We love how you keep trying to fight the good fight. And that was a message that eased me in the moment and has continued to sustain me to this day. So it's sort of the wellspring of the message I'd like to leave all of you tonight. We all have to fight the good fight right now. The merchants of division and the peddlers of counterfactual bullshit are even more toxic today than Rush Limbaugh was in his heyday. Our liberties, our values, our Constitution, the rule of law, and the very idea that certain rights are inalienable, that I can't take away from you just because I don't like how you look, I don't like how you sound, I don't like what you believe, I don't like how you screw. We are more in danger of that happening in our country than ever before. So here's what I think we have to do. We have to fight the good fight. We have to do what we can where we can. We can't lapse into cynicism. We can't nestle into cynicism, the easy excuse for doing nothing. We can't give in to despair or apathy. We have to use our wallets. We have to have the uncomfortable conversations. So don't give up. Don't get tired. Don't give up. Now, I know, this country has done some terrible things. We're the worst country in the history of the world, except for all the others. Because we're the only one that isn't just based on a lust for land and power. We're also based on a glorious idea, which sometimes we manage to live out in a glorious way. And it's the idea that right now we have to fight as hard as we can to protect. So, don't get tired. Don't give up. Do not give up. Don't give up. Fight the good fight. And that, dear Philadelphians, is the message.